I'm Joanna Simpson here at QuantMinds International in London. Joining me now is Eunice Zhu, Executive Director at SMBC Bank. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And just tell me, can you give me an overview of the QuantMinds International session that you've moderated? And what have you learned about properly quantifying ESG?
So I was very thrilled to moderate the panel discussion on how do we properly quantify ESG today. And the panel discussion was really lively, and there was a lot of interactions among the speaker itself, but also the interaction between the speaker and the audience, which I found it really insightful and useful. And in terms of ESG, what we went through are in the following orders: the definition of ESG quantification in the quantitative finance, and also practical examples of ESG quantification on the both buy side and sell side. The reason for that is we had three panel speakers. Heiko is 20 years seasoned investment professionals, and he has been using ESG quantification integration into the investment strategies. And then Murad is a lot of on the sell side in counterparty risk modeling in Lloyd's Banking Group, and he's very well known in quantitative climate finance and a lot of valuation adjustment model papers on the climate risk. And then the third speaker we have is Wim, and then he is a professor in the University of Leuven, Belgium. And from practitioner's perspective, it's great to have him as well to give us a bit neutral third-party views on how the ESG quantification has been, let's say, implemented or achieving in the past years in the financial industry. So it was a really good combination of the panel speaking. And then topic-wise, we had definition of ESG quantification, the practical examples, challenges in the ESG quantification because the data quality, the inconsistency and standardization of data is all up for a discussion. And also what's the impact of regulations to the ESG development and the quantification itself. Last but not least, we had talked about the very well known right now, the hot topic AI and the machine learning, how that actually impact the data, the ESG data as well. So,
yes, a lot to cover there.
A lot, yes.
And incorporating ESG factors into investment decisions and risk modeling is a huge challenge in the industry. How are the various stakeholders approaching this issue?
I think there are pros and cons. So a lot of feedback. So the discussion from Heiko has been the ESG quantification is really for value creation from the investors' perspective. So they would actually sometimes rely on the ESG rating, but arguably, which speakers actually agree, they think the ESG rating is not the only or most reliable benchmark for the ESG quantification. But from the buy side, the value creation from the ESG is definitely the main goal, let's say the main goal of the investment industry. And in terms of the data, a lot of the analysis has been done based on the 17 UN sustainable goals. And then they've used the different, let's say, the female alpha, the green patent, and then transition from the brown fields to green fields. A lot of initiatives to make sure that there is an alpha generation in the investment industry. On the sell side, I've got a lot of ideas and then feedbacks from Murad is they were, because of regulatory requirement, because of the advancement of the ESG, the importance of ESG in the financial industry, a lot of focus has been on how do we, to make sure banks can actually survive with ESG stress testing, climate risk stress testing. So from the sell side perspective, the view has been very positive. Without the push from the ESG, we think that we might have another financial crisis like 2008, but with the ESG push, with the more advanced risk modeling, we can sustain another, let's say, shock from sustainabilities or unsustainabilities. From the academia point of view, Wim also shared his views. He thinks there's a lot of yes, it's good that the transparency is there with the ESG rating, with the data mining, try to improve the data quality as much as possible. But at the same time, there will be model risk relates to the implementation, how the lack of benchmark to justify whether the model, the result from the alpha generation or from the risk stress testing, whether that model is valid enough to provide the valid result. So these are the risks. The other interesting discussion point is about the impact of regulation. The same thing with the data. We think that the regulation has pushed forward the whole involvement of ESG, but at the same time, because of the ESG concentration, we think there's a systematic risk, because from the investor side, it's very likely people will go for the same sustainable company. Everyone will be very concentrated on that specific company who does relative better than the other companies. So that's the systematic risk there. And then there would be legal risk as well, because companies promise a lot of promise in terms of how sustainable they are. But the reality is, if they can't deliver, or depending on the benchmark where they are delivering, there might be legal suits by the investors, by the shareholders to argue against their statement about them being sustainable.
And you touched upon data there. In the age of data and machine learning, what strategies are quants deploying to enhance the accuracy of ESG quantification?
Sure. So one of the topics we touched upon is AI and machine learning and how this impact the ESG data. At the beginning, I think the panel roughly agreed that they don't really see a synergy from the AI itself, because the AI, artificial intelligence, is a black box already. And if we apply the AI to ESG data, it might be just adding another layer of black box. So the overview sentiment from the panel is negative about AI. However, in terms of machine learning, I think the feedback has been very positive. The reason for that is, with machine learning, we can do more data minings. We can use the LLM model where, for example, there's a lot of data are concentrated on the bigger company who actually has public share, who have public regulatory disclosure, where people can rely on the data on. But there are a lot of private companies where the data is lack of. For those companies, if you use machine learning model, you could do approximation to know how sustainable that company is. Of course, the side effect of that is that the data might not be as cheap as we'd like it to be to actually get the data. On the other hand, the promising side Heiko had emphasized is actually the usage of data mining to the social media. Because as we've seen recent years, where the public influence on the share price, just because of sentiment, for example, GameStop, it's massive. So using the unconventional data from social media channels, from the other, let's say, news channels, we can actually use machine learning to grab those data together and try to create actually more better quality data for the ESG rater or the ESG company who are actually aiming for ESG to do better. So that's all the promising side. On the other hand, of course, we emphasized again the model risk there, because we are using machine learning. There is a model risk. And what we want to deliver the message is ESG can sometimes get very political, like country-wise or company-wise. But what we'd like to see is people will use either machine learning model or any other model to managing the risk, to maximize the return, to basically enlarge the shareholder value. And we did ask about the future perspective of where the ESG goes. And one of the audience actually asked, what's the life expectancy of ESG, which I found very interesting, but also coordinates to my question on the future perspective of ESG. Two speakers says that it will stay, which I think naturally will stay, but of course we need better data, better model to make sure the ESG rating is more reliable, to make sure we have a clear benchmark to evaluate the company performance, to evaluate the risk model. One speaker did say it might be very short-lived, but we will see in the future.
Sounds like some very interesting views were expressed there.
That was very good discussion, and for me as a practitioner in the derivatives trading, I picked up a lot of useful takeaways as well.
Eunice Zhu, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.